Recently, one of my viewers sent me a comment challenging me to try beating Terraria in Master Mode whilst only using items found throughout the Legend of Zelda game franchise. In this comment, they gave several examples of items I could use, such as bombs, the enchanted sword, Hermes boots, etc., seeing as all of these items can be found in both Terraria and the various Zelda games. However, I didn't know exactly how to classify an item as being in both franchises, seeing as there are plenty of items which either look extremely similar or have the same name but not both of these similarities. So, after reaching out via Discord, which by the way I have a community Discord server in the description down below, we eventually came to an agreement that so long as weapons, armor, accessories, etc. have at least one of these similarities, it's perfectly acceptable to use in this challenge. Oh yeah, and I have to wear the Hero's Vanity set throughout the entire playthrough, non-negotiable. Anyway, I hope you enjoy, and without any more waste of time, let's get into the video. Upon joining our world for the very first time, we immediately threw away everything we had, even the pickaxe and axe. Even though there aren't necessarily any restrictions on tools, I at least wanted to wait for after getting bombs to use them, as I felt using these tools early on would take away from the early game progression, making the start of the game feel like any other playthrough. That being said, because I had absolutely nothing to start off with, I was now completely relying on an exposed chest to get my first items, seeing as I couldn't break anything, not even pots, with my bare hands. Luckily for the video quality, we didn't need to stumble around in the pitch black for long, as we quickly found a chest containing a boomerang, which thankfully is a recurring item in the Legend of Zelda games, meaning we could use it to break pots and not only get torches, but also bombs, which we immediately used to clear the local forest despite the EPA telling us not to. After a quick trip to the jungle for reasons I physically cannot remember, we teleported back to spawn, where we managed to craft ourselves an upgrade to our current weapon, the enchanted boomerang, increasing our base damage from 12 to 20. At this point, feeling confident in our ability to defend ourselves, we headed over to the local cave system to harvest some ores, when suddenly we came across something I could never have expected.
No way. No, actually. No actual way. Okay. Well, that's actually just convenient. Got the enchanted sword and the enchanted boomerang. We are all set. We can fight Moonlord right now.
Apparently, the Terraria gods must have heard me boasting about how we could beat Moonlord, because that very night I was ever so kindly paid a visit from the Blood Moon, which kept killing me non-stop until I retracted my claims. I take it back. Please, make it end. The next morning, we made ourselves some iron tools, which proceeded to get absolutely zero use, seeing as I instead used bombs to start making a elevator, which by the way, allowed us to find an underground chest containing a pair of Hermes boots, an upgrade I was extremely excited to get, seeing as mobility in this challenge is going to be a massive problem for us, for reasons which will quickly become apparent.
I wonder if there could possibly be something above me. An island, perhaps? Nah, couldn't be. Whoa, an island? Never saw that coming, dude. Not once.
Looking inside of the skyward chest yielded us a shiny red balloon, which I wasn't completely sure would be allowed for this run. However, there does happen to be an item in Breath of the Wild called the Octo Balloon. This item, of course, is stretching the line in terms of what items can be used or not, but I'd love to hear your opinions on whether or not I should use this item for the second half of the challenge. Anyway, after heading back to spawn, we made ourselves a full set of iron armor and summoned the Eye of Cthulhu that very night. At first, I tried using the enchanted sword to deal damage, but quickly realized that our gold bow with frostburn arrows dealt more DPS and proceeded to use these for the rest of the fight, though I did switch back to the enchanted sword for the last hit. Oh, and by the way, we can't even use the Shield of Cthulhu in this run, so this fight was kinda pointless. But you know what's not pointless? Polygons. And King Slime, seeing as I wanted to get myself a full set of ninja armor. Naturally, this fight took longer than I would have liked it to, but eventually, using a random assortment of weapons such as our gold bow, the enchanted sword, the enchanted boomerang, and even some javelins we obtained, we managed to take down the second boss of this challenge. Unfortunately for us, we only managed to get 2 of the 3 armor pieces, so I tried fighting King Slime again, and once more before finally getting ourselves a full set of ninja armor, which provides us with the exact same amount of defense as iron armor, but with a couple stat bonuses which, trust me, we were gonna need. From here, the Goblin army decided to pay us a visit, where they relentlessly bullied us for our bland NPC houses, something I find incredibly embarrassing, especially in comparison to the houses we built in our previous world. How far we've fallen. The main problem we face with the Goblin army in this challenge is simply the fact that our weapons don't deal high DPS, nor do much of a good job in crowd control. But after dying a total of 6 times, we eventually defeated the Goblin army and immediately dreaded the search for the Goblin Tinkerer. However, unlike the previous world, we somehow found the Goblin Tinkerer after only a couple seconds of searching, which was somehow even faster than our search on our Shimmer Block playthrough, a challenge which is seemingly optimized for finding the Goblin Tinkerer at Mach speeds. Anyway, with the Goblin Scam Artist officially plaguing our world, we were able to buy ourselves a pair of rocket boots, which we immediately upgraded into Spectre boots, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the only item in this playthrough, not counting lightning or tear spark boots, which can provide us any form of flight, seeing as we can't use wings. Having no other upgrades we can make at this time, something I'm going to be saying a lot throughout this challenge, we headed over to the Crimson to fight the Brain of Cthulhu, which despite a really promising attempt, resulted in our own demise. However, during the fight, we managed to gather several tissue samples from the creepers, allowing us to make ourselves a Deathbringer pickaxe, which we used to farm a ton of obsidian and hellstone in order to make ourselves a full set of molten armor along with the volcano. But even with all of these upgrades, it quickly became apparent that upgrading our gear wasn't enough to fix our skill issue. But you know what can? Spending all of our money just for a single reforge, which allowed us to completely destroy the Brain of Cthulhu, once again yielding us another accessory we can't use. Man, I sure do love not being able to use 90% of the actually decent items in this game. Anyway, with the Brain of Cthulhu slain, we found ourselves once again unable to upgrade our gear in preparation for a clash with Skeletron. So, after building a quick arena, I proceeded to curse out some random old dude and was immediately humbled by the infamous rotating skull. After this pathetic attempt, I changed up my strategy by trying to build a minecart loop, and I bet you could never guess how this attempt went. On my third attempt, however, I tried building an invincibility machine, and the results were... we don't talk about that. At this point, we've tried fighting by land and by rail, and even still, we couldn't prevail. However, I saw one small shimmering glimpse of hope, the Blade of Grass. This is again one of those items which I personally think is walking ever so precariously down the line of being allowed or not for this run, but in the end, I deemed it acceptable, and immediately my luck started to turn around. Two Spiffo plushes in a row? I'm pretty sure those were actually, unironically, back-to-back drops, like, not even one in between. I'll have to check the footage. And I don't remember what the exact odds of getting a Spiffo plush were, but I think it was like around 1 in 1,500. So if I actually got back-to-back Spiffo, I think I just used up all the luck for the rest of this challenge, and I'm a tad bit worried now. After this incredibly unlikely event, I farmed several Eyes of Cthulhu for money and created a graveyard biome in order to make ourselves a mana regeneration band, which ended up being completely useless seeing as the health regeneration does not stack with my already equipped band of regeneration. And no, I did not realize that for the remainder of this video. Anyway, after reforging our Blade of Grass, I once again returned to the dungeon, where I managed to test our new weapon not on Skeletron's massive forehead, but on King Slime, seeing as the Slime Rain for some reason will not leave us alone for just a single video. Like, seriously, I've actually lost track of how many times I've had to deal with the Slime Rain in the past 3 videos, but I know we're in the double digits at this point. But once King Slime was taken care of, I once again summoned Skeletron, but this time with an actual plan. In my previous attempts, I basically jumped headfirst with no idea what I was doing, but this time, I decided to methodically plan out every action. Phase 1. Lower both of Skeletron's hands as much as possible using the Blade of Grass. Seeing as Skeletron can start shooting skulls out of his own once at least one of his arms are destroyed, we want to try taking down both arms at the same time. The Blade of Grass is perfect for this, seeing as the sword itself has decent reach, has a fast use time, and most importantly, has homing leaf projectiles which have a chance to inflict poison, dealing extra damage in times where we ourselves may not be able to do so. Phase 2. Skull Dodging. The first couple times I saw this attack, I was completely oblivious as to how to dodge the skulls. They fly around in a circular motion, yet running in a straight line is most certainly a death sentence. However, over time, I learned the simple trick of simply looping Skeletron, which may not have a perfect 100% success rate, but is rather consistent and can be done without the Shield of Cthulhu, which, yes, I'm still mad that I can't use. During this phase, I switched to my gold bow to shoot Skeletron from a distance. However, once Skeletron starts spinning right round like a record baby right round, I switched to our Blade of Grass for some succulent melee damage. Keep in mind that this head spin phase only lasts for around 6 seconds, and if you don't get out of the way in time, you may take several crippling hits from the skull projectiles, so it's a good idea to count how long Skeletron's been spinning for. Phase 3. Win. Honestly, I don't know what else to call this phase other than win. Really, all you need to do is make sure that you aren't at the end of your platform, and to keep dodging most of, if not all of Skeletron's attacks. My advice for this fight as a whole is to take as much time as you need. Even though there is technically a time limit to this fight, it's not worth it for you to throw an entire run because you're impatient. If you're getting low, back off for a second and focus on dodging. Using all of these techniques, we managed to slowly chip away Skeletron's health, and before we knew it, a pile of juicy loot was sitting at our feet. This is the second world in a row that I've gotten the chippiest couch. Hello? With the Calcium Guardian defeated, we are granted access into the dungeon, which contains several items we desperately need for our final stretch of pre-hard mode, most notably being the Cobalt Shield, the Aqua Scepter, and the Shadow Key. Fortunately for us, we managed to get the Aqua Scepter and the Shadow Key on our very first chest, but unfortunately for us, it took an entire 6 more chests to get the Cobalt Shield. That being said, we did eventually find one, and used it to craft ourselves the Obsidian Shield. Oh yeah, and it was only now that I opened the Skeletron treasure bag, where I was presented with the Bone Glove, which, hey, I'll gladly take all the help and extra DPS that I can. After this, I went back down to Hell where I rightfully belong and got myself a Flame Lash, which I don't use much for the remainder of pre-hard mode, but who knows, maybe it'll be helpful in early hard mode. But what I do know is that we're desperately going to need a Hell Bridge for the Wall of Flesh, along with a mob farm for once we finally enter hard mode, both of which I decided to do now, and both of which taking an egregious amount of time. However, once I finally decided that we were ready to fight the Wall of Flesh, the game decided to do a little bit of trolling, and gave us one more critical inspection of our even more pathetic NPC houses by once again invading our world with the Goblin army. The Goblins naturally didn't stand the slightest chance, but undeniably proved that they are one of the most annoying events in this game, and I'm only hoping that the rest of this playthrough only sees one specific Goblin, and hopefully not very often. Alright, first attempt. Let's do it. During the fight, I opted to main the Aqua Scepter, seeing as it can pierce through enemies, which I must admit is rather refreshing after our disastrous Wall of Flesh attempts on our Yo-Yo only playthrough. That being said, the Aqua Scepter doesn't really have the highest DPS, and required a ton of mana potions, but hey, everything has a price, and I certainly wasn't about to use true melee to fight the Wall of Flesh. At least not for this playthrough. Don't worry, your prayers have been heard. Unsurprisingly, our first attempt ended prematurely, though we did get the wall below half health, which I took as a sign that hopefully we wouldn't need to spend too much time on this fight. On our second attempt, however, we got insultingly close to beating the Wall of Flesh, but alas, it was not meant to be. On our third attempt, history was seeming to repeat itself, as both the Wall of Flesh and our own health were dwindling down to the last thread, and with the wall's increased speed, I knew that we were about to die on our closest run yet. But as we were mere frames away from certain death, we died. But not before the wall. Let's go, baby. We getting out of pre-hard mode with this one. Woo! Last time we were on this world, we barely, and I mean barely, managed to beat the Wall of Flesh, having been literal frames away from certain death ourselves. However, in the end, we managed to pull through and finally found ourselves entering hard mode. From here, I ended up taking a break from this world in order to work on some other videos. However, while I was away, some of you absolutely stunning individuals took to the comment section to make some suggestions and give some general advice for the second half of this challenge. So, after reading all of your comments, I think it's time we make some changes to our current setup. First of all, I think it's time we retire the shiny red balloon, an item I originally used as I felt it resembled that of the Octo Balloon. However, you the community were pretty evenly split as to whether I should be allowed to continue using this item or replace it with the balloon pufferfish. In the end, I decided to make the executive decision and use neither of these items, as this now frees up an accessory slot for an item I genuinely didn't think we could use, the Shield of Cthulhu. If you watched part 1 of this challenge, you would know that I had on numerous occasions made the claim that we couldn't use the Shield of Cthulhu as there simply aren't any Zelda items which look like it, and while that is true, one of my viewers had reminded me of the Shield Attack skill, which functions pretty similar to the Shield of Cthulhu's dash, meaning we can and could have used this item the entire time. While we're on the topic of things I was wrong about in part 1, there's another vital accessory we can get ourselves: wings. While there aren't any traditional wings in the Legend of Zelda games, one of the recurring items, Rock's Cape, functions quite similarly, though I'll only be greenlighting angel wings as I feel that they most accurately resemble this item, and unfortunately for us, we didn't just magically have a pair of these sitting around in a chest, so we had to go up to space to farm some harpies, where I proceeded to get absolutely violated by not just one, but 2 wyverns, which, as it would turn out, would end up being one of the main antagonists of this challenge, as you'll see later on in this video. Anyway, after filing for a PFA restraining order, the wyverns decided to go against the court rulings and tried to take a nibble out of my femur, but unfortunately for this space lizard, I was ready for them, and proceeded to absolutely shred them using our Aqua Scepter, and upon rummaging through the remains, we procured a whopping 20 Souls of Light, which is not only the exact amount needed to make our wings, but is also the max amount which can be dropped at once. From here, we went into the underground hollow in order to grind some Souls of Light, but while down here, we also managed to find the bound wizard along with a magic quiver, and after being involuntarily sent home numerous times, we finally had all the materials to make the angel wings.
Mithril Calcum Anvil. That's fantastic, so I can't even use the wings that I just worked for until after that. Okay. I got you, dude. I got you.
After being informed of this rather tragic news, we headed over to the Crimson in order to smash some altars, where we proceeded to get the exact opposite of every ore we needed. Like, really? There was a 7 in 8 chance that we would get at least one of the ores we wanted, but no, we just had to get none of them. Regardless, we returned back to the mines to gather some palladium, but upon returning to the surface, we didn't stop to make ourselves a pickaxe, but rather continued to the right of the world with the hopes of finding the shimmer, which definitely didn't take me 40 minutes and several deaths to find. I have no idea where you got that information from. Anyway, after we converted our palladium into cobalt, we returned to the stack of sticks which we call home, where I realized I'd made a crucial oversight.
I seem to have done a miscalculation. I need 45. I have 25. That means I need 20 more. Silly me. How did that happen?
So, after mining more palladium, again, and heading to the shimmer, again, we were finally able to make ourselves not only a full set of cobalt armor, but an ore calcum anvil, along with finally getting that succulent pair of angel wings. Having upgraded our armor and accessories, it was time to finally get ourselves some hard mode weapons, and to do this, we headed over to the underground ice biome in order to find and kill ice mimics, where the only useful thing we got was 46 gold, which I immediately lost after being ever so kindly sent home by a mob I refused to name out of the fear of ending my career. However, after getting beamed out of existence by an ice golem, we finally managed to drop the frost brand from an ice mimic, though our success was short-lived as we proceeded to spend quite literally all of our lunch money reforging at the goblin stinkerer, who proceeded to laugh at us and ask where all of our money went, causing us to respond in the only way we know how, and that is of course to completely tear down the NPC housing while mocking the goblin for being homeless, only to realize that we shared the same house. Not wanting to be homeless, I proceeded to spend the next 3 hours rebuilding the town, consisting of the main house, an outdoor courtyard, the storage building, along with making some apartments for the extra and unwanted NPCs, which I am personally going to make sure are going to go into generational debt for paying the quote-unquote reasonable price of $3,500 per month. Anyway, from here, we went back to the caverns in order to get ourselves some ichor and souls of night, where I proceeded to get trickshotted by a skeleton archer so hard that I genuinely considered retiring on the spot and never touched the game again. However, I have a video to make and an audience to please, so I went back to the 9th circle of hell to get the remaining ichor and souls of night needed to craft the golden shower, an item we will most certainly be using throughout the remainder of this challenge. Before we try our hand at fighting the mech bosses, I went ahead and gathered several frost cores, along with enough adamantite in order to get ourselves a full set of... Did I actually miscalculate the amount of ores needed for a second time? And oh, isn't that just lovely? Not wanting to fight the twins in cobalt or even partial frost armor for that matter, we had a clock to race. So we hopped down our elevator and was able to mine enough adamantite to finally craft ourselves a full set of frost armor. And from here, we waited. And waited a bit more before realizing that the twins had stood us up and would not in fact be spawning tonight. Feeling rather disappointed with the previous night's events, we slept for an entire day so that we could summon the twins ourselves, and seeing as our main weapons comprised of the golden shower, a gold bow, and hellfire arrows, we had rather unsurprisingly died almost immediately into the fight. After this rather embarrassing attempt, I tried to reforge our gear at the goblin stinker once more, but when we inevitably ran out of money, we went back to our mob farm where we somehow managed to get the marrow along with the beam sword. At the time, I wasn't even sure if we could even use the marrow in the first place, but upon asking my Discord server, a resounding number of you said yes, so we made our way back to the arena to challenge the twins to a rematch, but were instead greeted by the probe master himself, who then proceeded to probe us with one of his various probes, leaving me mentally scarred for the rest of my probably short life. Anyway, after the unspeakable events which just took place, we summoned the twins for a rematch, and things were actually going quite well for us, being able to not only bring Spasmatism into his second phase, but completely killing him altogether. But right as we managed to get Retinazer into his mechanical form, we were absolutely horrified to see that our PFA restraining order had just expired, and taking full advantage of this, a wyvern appeared from the heavens above, distracting me from Retinazer's relentless barrage of lasers, causing us to fumble the bag and being laughed at and humiliated by the Dryad, a fate worse than cleaning a Taco Bell bathroom during rush hour traffic. Wanting to repair our reputation, we went back to the arena to settle things once and for all with the twins, and after taking down Spasmatism, we made sure to stick to the lowest platform to prevent any chance of a wyvern ruining yet another attempt. And sure enough, without any wyverns to distract us, we were able to take down Retinazer, officially killing our first mechanical boss after a total of 24 hours spent on this world, making this playthrough on track for being one of the longest and most psychologically painful I've done thus far. But Crispy, you may be asking, why did you specifically choose to fight the twins as your first mechanical boss? And to that, my answer is quite simple: the magical harp. This weapon shoots a barrage of projectiles which can penetrate and pierce through multiple mobs at once, making it one of the best weapons we can use against the destroyer. But even still, I quickly realized that it wasn't quite enough to deal with the ungodly number of probes. So after dying to a random possessed armor, I decided to test out what would happen if we were to only use the golden shower, and somehow actually won. Mind you, this fight took literally the entire night, and I only had a couple of seconds to spare, but the destroyer is dead, and I'm personally not going to complain about that. What I am going to complain about, however, is getting beamed out of existence by the 4th rune wizard of this playthrough whilst trying to fish for some potions. Anyway, having beaten 2 of the 3 mechanical bosses, we decided to finish what we started and summon Skeletron Prime, and Jesus Christ, is that another wyvern? Whatever, it's fine, we can just go back and do another attempt. It's not that big of a deal, and oh my god, did I just really die because of a zombie right now? I'm gonna lose it. I'm losing it. I have absolutely 100%. After the previous attempt, I was at the end of my rope, so I decided not only to make a long asphalt platform, but also lower the overall height of the arena to hopefully combat the wyvern infestation we've been having recently. And with these changes, we found ourselves with full health and relatively close to killing Skeletron Prime. This could be it. We may never have to deal with Skeletron Prime again. All we need to do is just not blunder this fight for literally no reason. The amount of pain I'm feeling right now is indescribable, and the amount of hair I've lost from this fight alone has even Steve Harvey jealous. I'm losing it. How much longer will my suffering continue? Actually, please don't answer that. I don't want to know. Given the previous events, I decided to make an artificial corruption in order to fish for some wrath potions. So I bought some corrupt seeds from the Dryad and proceeded to do just that. And on the next night, we took to the arena once more, where things once again were looking just as smooth as my now balding head. But right before Skeletron Prime was about to die, I almost threw the entire run for a second time. Yes! I got worried, I fell off the arena. Oh, it's over though. Oh my god, finally. With all 3 mech bosses finally slain, I figured that we should probably invest in some hollowed armor in preparation for fighting Plantera, but there was a slight issue. 2, 3, 4, 54. Yep, I'm literally 1 hollowed bar away from a full set of hollowed armor. So who am I gonna have to fight again? Definitely the twins. The twins was the easiest by far. After taking down the twins for a second time, we finally had enough hollowed bars to make ourselves a full set of armor, and for anyone wondering why I'm using the headgear instead of the mask for more defense, my Discord server pretty much forced me to use it as it more closely resembles the magic armor. Plus, my main weapons right now are coincidentally magic weapons, so I guess things worked out in the end. From here, we bombed ourselves a massive arena, got full health, and consumed ambrosia, a vital crystal, and an aegis fruit for some succulent permanent upgrades, and after drinking some potions and taking several breath mints, we summoned Plantera, who as it turns out is not quite fond of mint. For the first stage of this fight, we mainly used the golden shower to lower Plantera's defense, and then switched to the marrow to deal the majority of the damage, all the while trying to fly in circles and dodging as many projectiles as possible. However, once stage 2 started, we continued to use the golden shower, but swapped out the marrow for the magical harp in order to pierce through Plantera's tentacles. Given Plantera's speed, circling her was no longer a viable option, so we mainly just ran from one end of the arena to the other, and soon enough, Plantera simply crumbled into a pile of cellulose and some sweet yet useless loot. After Plantera fell, I completely ignored fighting Golem for now, as we had not yet found the Jungle Temple, but rather decided to summon the Empress of Light, a fight which despite lasting the majority of the night, resulted in us dying well before even bringing the Empress to half health. After this, I realized we were completely out of vacant NPC housing, so we quickly built a cottage which allowed the cyborg to move in, which in turn allowed us to buy ourselves a rather controversial weapon, the Proximity Mine Launcher. The reason this item is so controversial for this challenge is the fact that there's only a single instance I'm aware of throughout the Legend of Zelda franchise in which we were introduced to a rocket launcher type weapon, and it's in a cutscene where it's not even Link using it in the first place. But don't worry, I hardly ever use this weapon in the first place as it honestly sucks, and every time I did try to use it, I would just end up dying. Seeing as we were very obviously unable to fight the Empress of Light with our current gear, I swallowed my pride and began the extraordinarily long and mentally taxing search for the Jungle Temple. And when I say that, I'm not being hyperbolic, as this took me an entire hour of actively searching to find. I finally found the Jungle Temple, and I'm gonna just quickly show you how much jungle I needed to search for this Jungle Temple. It's completely absurd. Yeah, I searched the entire jungle, and the temple is in the only spot that I didn't check that it could be in. I'm losing it. I'm losing it. Remember when I said that every time I tried to use the proximity mine launcher, I died? Yeah, well, I tried to use it in the jungle temple, and after turning myself into a trillion smaller pieces, I ended up dying an additional 3 more times before I even managed to enter Golem's personal gamer den. And the way I know this is a gamer den is the fact that no natural light has found its way into this room for a couple thousand years at the very least. Quite ironic, as there's an altar with presumably the sun above it, along with the fact that Golem can drop the sunstone. Anyway, once we were in the boss room, I realized I had completely forgotten to make potions, but decided to give the fight a try regardless, where we managed to bring Golem down to half health before getting beamed out of existence. Yeah, I should probably go fishing for some potions, shouldn't I? Fishing. One of the most boring and uneventful activities in this game. At least I can sit back, relax, and not have to worry about my physical and psychological well-being. Anyway, now that we have a bunch of potions, along with a femur with a slight bite taken out of it, surely we'll be able to beat Golem now, right? Right? Okay. But on our very next attempt, we found ourselves actually dealing some pretty decent damage to Golem, though we were also taking on heavy damage ourselves and almost ended up dying when Golem cornered us against the wall. But by nothing more than pure chance, we managed to break free and brought Golem's health to 0.
Yes! Yes! Finally!
With Golem finally defeated, we went back to our base in order to craft ourselves a full set of turtle armor, which we then turned into beetle armor, bringing our defense up from a measly 67 all the way up to an insane 109. And for the first time in this challenge, I started to feel that maybe this won't be impossible after all. Having beaten Golem once already, we beat him an additional 2 more times in order to get ourselves the Staff of Earth. Also, it was around here where we made ourselves the Charm of Myths. Thought I'd just let you know. With the Staff of Earth, we headed over to the dungeon, not to fight the lunatic cultists, but to farm ectoplasm, which we used to make a pumpkin moon medallion in the hopes of getting ourselves a horseman's blade. With our newfound weapon, we were able to very easily shred through the first couple of waves, but started to slow down once the hellhounds and headless horsemen started to spawn. Also, it turns out that Morningwood over here is not a big fan of us staying alive, and we ended up dying 3 times during this event. However, we were able to get a pumpkin to spawn, but were sadly unable to drop the weapon we needed. Because of this, we returned to our arena the very next night to start the pumpkin moon a second time, where we managed to kill 2 more pumpkins, but unfortunately, no blade was dropped. Needing to make another medallion, we tried going back to the dungeon to grind some more ectoplasm, when we accidentally ended up starting, in my personal opinion, the worst event of the entire game. No. I think it's too late. This is not what I wanted! Using the Staff of Earth, we were able to save ourselves a smidge bit of sanity during this event, but even still, this ended up being one of the longest 10 minutes of my life. Either way, the Martians were eventually defeated, which meant it was time to once again start another pumpkin moon, where we got absolutely nothing. However, on our 4th attempt, we finally managed to get ourselves the Horseman's Blade, signaling the end of one painful grind and the start of a far, far more painful one. But first, the customary ritual of giving all of our money to the sulfur-reeking maidenless goblin in hopes of getting an actually decent reforge. Dreading the pain we were about to endure, we headed back up to the arena that very night to once again summon the Empress of Light, where we used our brand new Horseman's Blade to deal some extra damage whenever she was close enough for our little arms to reach, but otherwise we sat back and used the Golden Shower along with the Staff of Earth to deal the majority of our damage, but due to what's known as a skill issue, we found ourselves dying quite early on in the fight. The next night, we summoned the Empress of Light yet again, where we actually managed to bring her into her second phase, and despite dealing a rather impressive amount of damage, we ended up getting overwhelmed by the increased speed of her attacks, and, to the surprise of nobody, died once again. Dude, I was close. The next night, however, we found ourselves actually getting incredibly close to beating the Empress of Light. Oh hey, is that morning? The next night, however, we found ourselves actually getting incredibly close to beating the Empress of Light. Oh hey, is that morning? I can actively feel my hairline receding at near exponential speeds as this fight is causing me untold amounts of physical and emotional distress. Knowing that 99.9% of gamblers quit right before hitting it big, I decided to roll the dice one more time and gave the Empress of Light one last attempt. And given my now perfectly bald and aerodynamic head, we found ourselves dodging attacks like never before. But even still, the dreaded 430 was quickly approaching with nothing we could do to stop it. All we could do now was wait. Oh! Finally! Oh, right as it became day, right as it became day. Oh, my heart rate is up. Okay, what did I get? I didn't even get anything I wanted. No! Of the 4 weapons we could have gotten from this nightmare of a fight, we got the only one we couldn't use, meaning we would have to fight this boss yet again. However, seeing as I am not a masochist contrary to popular belief, I decided to search for a better weapon when I came across something equally as painful, yet possibly feasible: the Blizzard Staff. Knowing our only 2 options at this point were fighting the Empress of Light for seemingly the billionth time in the Frost Moon, I decided to do the latter, where we found ourselves absolutely cruising through the first couple of waves by using a combination of our Horseman's Blade and the Staff of Earth. And soon enough, we found ourselves fighting the first boss of the night, Everscream, who would end up being a lot more crucial to this challenge than I could ever have imagined. Anyway, after killing a couple more Everscreams and Sand Tanks, we eventually found ourselves facing against the biggest, baddest, and I mean baddest boss of them all, Ice Queen, who, after killing us for the first time, proceeded to camp our spawn, preventing us from doing anything else for the remainder of the night. Thinking all hope was lost and that we'd be forced to lose every last follicle of hair in our body while trying to fight the Empress of Light, I opened my inventory and was immediately hit with a glimmer of hope: the Razor Pine. Seeing as the Razor Pine is practically a tree branch, I asked my Discord server if we could use it in this challenge, and while the results were close, a majority still said yes. And with this, we were overwhelmed with the joy, but completely oblivious to just how overpowered this item truly was. Wanting to test our brand new weapon, we headed back to our arena in order to fight the Empress of Light once more, where we found ourselves absolutely decimating her health at record speeds, and at only 11:15, we found ourselves completely stunned. Did we really just beat the Empress of Light in sub 4 minute time? The same boss which we were struggling with for so long? And to that, the answer was yes. Yes, we did. Seeing the true potential of this item, we attempted what no man had done before, and tried to beat the Empress of Light 2 times in the same night. And while we were able to quickly dispose of the first boss, the pressure eventually got to us, and we were unfortunately unable to see our dreams come to fruition. Either way, upon opening our singular treasure bag, we were greeted by the item I was after this entire time: the Eventide. Now that we had arguably the best weapon of this entire challenge, I decided to see what would happen if we tried to fight the Lunatic Cultist without any potions. And, that's a little anticlimactic. I honestly expected more from the Lunatic Cultist, but we managed to maintain practically full health the entire fight. So, I guess it's time to fight the pillars? First up, we have ourselves the Vortex Pillar, where our main strategy was to only get Alien Queens to spawn, as they are quite easy to deal with, especially from a distance. During this pillar, we only managed to die once, and that was because of a random projectile which fell seemingly from the heavens above, as there was no other explanation for its origin. But once we collected the remnants of the first pillar, it was time to move on to the second, the Solar Pillar. In my previous video, I mentioned how the Solar Pillar is quite possibly the worst pillar of this entire event, but in reality, so long as you keep yourself on the ground and keep a close eye on Fire Sonic, you should honestly be fine for the majority of this pillar. That being said, I did end up dying twice, but that was, or at least should have been expected in the first place. Up next is the Nebula Pillar, which is honestly more so deserving of the Worst Pillar award, where I managed to die a total of 4 times, with the last death honestly being the game just giving a big middle finger. 26 health! Really? 26 health? You couldn't just let me kill the pillar? Oh my god. So I responded the only way I saw fit, and that was to use the Enchanted Sword to deal the final blow. Lastly, we have ourselves the Stardust Pillar, which is well regarded as the easiest pillar in the entire game. Okay, look, it's still a pillar, so dying once is to be expected. Okay, 2 deaths isn't the end of the world, okay? It won't happen again, I promise. So what if we died 3 times? We died 4 times to the Nebula Pillar. It's not that bad, all things considered. 4 deaths. Okay, so we died 4 times. What are you gonna do? Sue me? See, all it took was 4 deaths. We can just kill the pillar and just move on with our lives. After respawning, we made our way to our arena to face the 3-eyed mutant calamari man himself, but seeing as we started this fight already quite low on health, along with taking a direct hit from the Phantasmal Death Ray early on, things weren't looking quite so good for us, I must admit. During this fight, it also became very apparent that while our wings are able to let us dodge the Phantasmal Death Ray, it's only just barely able to do so, and after mistiming one of these cycles, we ended up getting completely eviscerated. Armed with the knowledge from our past mistakes, we went into the second fight re-exhilarated and learned the timing needed to evade the Death Ray, allowing us to live for much longer than our first attempt. From here, we managed to take out all 3 of Moonlord's eyes in relative quick succession, exposing his core. But unfortunately, despite having stayed alive for nearly an entire 10 minutes, we got completely overwhelmed by the true eyes of Cthulhu and once again died a rather tragic death. Realizing just how long each individual attempt was going to take, I made sure to double stock our potions going into the 3rd fight, and after heading to our arena, we summoned Moonlord for what I was hoping would be the last time. On this attempt, we made sure to target the top eye whenever possible, but when it was closed, we'd alternate between each of the hands in order to take down all 3 eyes at the same time, once again exposing Moonlord's core. From here, our only real threat were the True Eyes of Cthulhu and their miniature phantasmal death rays, so we tried to outrun them using our asphalt platform, and while this did work to some degree, oftentimes Moonlord was simply too far away to deal consistent damage. But after some experimentation, we found a distance which seemed to work quite well and were able to deal some heavy damage, while for the most part being able to avoid taking damage ourselves. And finally, 4 months after initially starting this challenge, Moonlord, like the many bosses before him, crumbled away into nothingness, meaning we had officially beaten Massimo Terraria while only using items from the Legend of Zelda game franchise. And of course, if you enjoyed watching this video, please consider subscribing and make sure to turn on the notification bell to be notified when I do more Terraria challenges just like this. Anyway, thank you again so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.